the lane. 15, 10. Touchdown, Chargers.
What's up, guys? We are back with a Week 17 edition of Chargers Weekly, as always powered by Microsoft Surface, and as always joined by Matt Money Smith, as the Chargers head to Denver, closing the season with a pair of divisional opponents after a really great performance, I thought, in terms of effort against the Buffalo Bills, 24-22, and Bunny, it felt like a different team. I was really rooting for Gift to get his first win, and they darn near almost did it.
Yeah, almost. A lot to kind of get into from what we saw, and I think we'll start at the very end. You know, when you talk about almost, I thought Kellen Moore drew up a heck of a play, and you know, considering how recent the passing was of Frank Wycheck, it would have been a heck of a tribute to him to get the Music City Miracle rehashed against the Bills and have the Chargers do it. You know, unfortunately for Kellen, as well designed and as perfectly executed as the first part of that play was, from Ekeler back to Easton and then the lateral to Erickson, just couldn't quite get that first block to seal that line, even though they had all the bodies over there. And Zion just kind of climbed a little bit too far, too fast, and Brennan kind of whiffed on the block, and Erickson had to immediately peel off what looked to be a perfectly designed play. But I think I'll just start there, Chris. I really enjoyed the game plan that Kellen put together for this offense, and I really enjoyed seeing Cameron Dicker kick 5 field goals for the first time by a Charger kicker in at least 10 years. So it was that type of game. The defense played great. You knew it was going to be tight. DJ kept saying it. Just take him to the deep end, and let's see if you can pull him under at the end and get out of here with a win. And I thought it was, you know, unfortunately, the 4th time they've now lost, you know, when having a lead in the 4th quarter. I think 6th time this year now they've lost by 3 or fewer points. Those are tough to swallow, but I really enjoyed the game. I did. I thought they played inspired football.
And you just look at everything that they're working with. No Justin Herbert, no Keenan Allen. I thought that Gift said it perfectly. He said he was expecting a heavyweight fight. He wanted to take the points at every chance he could get. And it's very smart when you have a kicker that's as good as Cameron Dicker, man. I don't think we've seen a kicker come into the Chargers as confident and as automatic as he has been, Money. And, you know, I think you talked about it the week before, just how good he's been. And even in spots where, you know, it's 4th and 3 or 4th and 5 and you want to go for it, sometimes taking the points is the better option. And Gift kind of used that and said, hey, we're going to take the points. We're going to get something out of these long drives. I don't care if it's 7 or 3. We're going to get points on the board.
Yeah, I mean, you know, let's just go back to what we talked about 3 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago. And I go through the play-by-play, and you're talking about zeros. You lose on downs. You're now down 7-0 after the interception that Justin threw inside his own 3-yard line. And you're still down 7-0. You lose a ball on downs. And you're down 10-0, and you lose a ball on downs. And it's like, that's 9 points. That's 9 points in a 10-9 game with 2 minutes left in the 3rd quarter. It felt like it was that kind of game against the Broncos, and you couldn't quite figure out, okay, this isn't the Chiefs, it's not the Dolphins, it's not the Lions. Why are we chasing points? And I think you saw Gift recognize the type of game that this was going to be, that the Bills have had a penchant for turning the ball over quite a bit this year and losing games that a lot of people think they should not lose, but they do it because they're careless with the football. And I think he played, you know, that was the script that he wrote for this game, and I thought they followed it perfectly. And they darn near had it. And, you know, I was doing the Bally show with Lorenzo Neal, and he made a perfect point. We talked about the zero blitz that DA called. It was a perfect call. You know, you've got Josh Allen on the run. He's falling backwards, and he heaves that ball to the right sideline. And if there's better communication between Hawkins and Asante, they're going to switch instead of try to work through each other and bonk off each other. And one of them's going to get a pick 6. But he made the point. He's like, Josh Allen's probably the only quarterback in the league that makes that throw, that gets it all the way to Shakir. You know, you just got Josh Allen. I mean, that's really all that happened there. It was a perfect call. They played it great, and Josh Allen just kind of got the better of them, and they end up getting out with a loss instead of a win.
Chargers fans were hoping Shakir scored right? You get the ball right
100%.
back. And I think that
100%.
really kind of ended the game in a way, because the Bills had that ample time to milk clock and kick their field goal and go ahead. And
Right.
that was, I think, the difference, because even Gibson, man, more times than not, that's a pick six. That's going the other way. But that kind of did it, right? Like, had they scored, Easton Stick would have had much more time
2.5 minutes
with a crack to win, right?
Right. So, and this is just, sidebar. This is one of my problems with instant replay. You can't do it that and look, the Chargers didn't have that opportunity because this was a nationally televised game on NBC or Peacock, and they had the 10 cameras. So you get the extra cameras, you get the NBC it, you get the super slow-mo. Like, to me, there should be a cap on how tight you can get, how slow, the frames per second that you can get in there, because that's one where if it's just a regular 1 o'clock kick on Fox or CBS, you probably got 6 cameras instead of 10, and that thing stays a touchdown. And I'm not saying it my point is, I just feel like when you're looking at this thing for 5 minutes and you've got to get to the 9th or 10th camera and you've got to slow it down to, milliseconds in order to figure out, oh yeah, look, there's a couple blades of turf touching his knee. It just kind of takes a little bit of the romance out of the game. So that's, it's unfortunate. Had Shakir not, had that probably 1/100th of 1 second where his knee was in contact with the turf, we get to see Easton, who had a heck of a game, and this offense try to get back after it and score. But, I think the one thing, when we do it half glass, glass half full, now let's go glass half empty. This is something that we've seen repeatedly this season, where the offense gives you a lead. All you got to do is get off the field. Get off the field. Get off on a 3rd down, force a 4th down, and maybe a long field goal attempt. And unfortunately, it happened again, where you got a busted coverage, you got someone that breaks a tackle, and, they end up getting the win, and the Chargers find a way to lose.
Chargers fans' minds are everywhere at this point, right? They're focused on who the next coach and general manager are going to be, and you got the Broncos and Chiefs up. Are you going to lose out and get a higher draft pick, or do you actually want to just bury the Broncos this Sunday and maybe make it miserable for the Chiefs in Week 18? So a lot to kind of digest. Just sticking with this game for a little bit. We'll start offensively. You mentioned Easton Stick in the game that he had. They only scored 1 touchdown in the game, but I thought Austin Ekeler, they got back to just getting him the ball, 18 touches. He needs to have the touches for this offense to go. We talked about all the guys that he don't have, but I thought that after the second half in Vegas and just the nightmare that Easton Stick had in terms of 2 touchdowns going the other way, he really rebounded. And this is a great evaluation process for him over the next 2 weeks to see if Easton Stick's going to be the backup quarterback here.
Well, I think Giff said it best after the game. Easton's an NFL quarterback. There's no doubt. He's in good for him. You never know until you get the call, and teams want to see, can we count on this guy to win us a game? Can we count on him to win us a quarter? Can we maybe count on him to win us 3 games? And I think Easton's certainly proven that he can do that, and he's going to spend a lot of time in the NFL. Now, what his future looks like, and whether or not one of these teams that drafts a quarterback in the 1st round and isn't quite sure that they want to throw him out there right away, let's bring in a bridge or somebody to compete and try to take that shot. I think that was a possibility for Easton this year. As a matter of fact, I know it was. I know for a fact that somebody had kind of proposed that, and he opted to stay with the Chargers for 1 more year. And so I'm very excited for him. I don't think there's any question that the Chargers would love to have him back. I think it's hard to spend money in a quarterback room when you've already got $250 million tied up to that position. You try to find a rookie contract to put in there, someone you can trust, like we had trust in Easton. But for him, I'd like to see him get a win. I want to see him get a win on that resume. When you see, the GS game started 0-2-0, I'd love to see it read 2-2 for him moving forward. Knock off the Broncos, knock off the Chiefs, get those wins in the division, officially eliminate the Broncos from playoff contention, put an E next to their name in the standings, and see if you can ruin the Chiefs and push them all the way down to the 4th spot the following week. I understand the draft pick, and I do sympathize, right? Well, I do understand. I don't want to say I empathize or sympathize with people that want that, but I think this is a team that desperately needs more young talent, that needs draft picks. And if you can find yourself in the top 5 and you start talking about quarterbacks, like Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix and Michael Penix, obviously behind Drake May and Caleb Williams, then maybe you're talking about getting a pretty big haul, with Marvin Harrison Jr. up there. And so I understand that aspect of it as well. And to me, that's what I would do. I think, with the pick, I feel like I would really like to add a lot of selections, because I just feel like this team needs, more seconds, more thirds, more fourth rounders that are out there making an impact with the big they need more youth. This team needs to get younger. I really believe that. And I think, Chris, it may start as soon as this week, where we want to see a little bit more youth out there, performing.
It's a big chip, right? A top 10 pick in this draft specifically is a big chip. When you even take Drake May and Caleb Williams out of it, you mentioned those other quarterbacks. Somebody's going to fall in love with one of these quarterbacks.
Sure.
Jaden Daniels is probably going to be a top 10 pick now. You mentioned Bo Nix and the amount of starts that he has under his belt at Oregon. That's going to be attractive to a team. So for a team like the Chargers, who had really no thought of being in the top 10 this year, to be able to trade out of that and stack up on both sides of the football, especially the defensive and offensive lines, for Justin Herbert, I think that's great. But considering too, buddy, just the cap numbers of some of these players, a lot of these guys are not going to be here next year. It's plain and simple. Financial decision. We'll get into the one that they made in Denver too. But quickly, defensively, seeing Derwin James out there for 71% of the snaps, mostly in slot, what were your thoughts?
Well, I read the article that Popper had, and it definitely had a negative tone to it, which I understand. It's the fewest percentage of snaps that Derwin's played since he was drafted, save being ejected or injury. I think it was 74.6% or something like that, and he's been at 95 or 100 for nearly every game. But we've talked about this season. Just because he can do it doesn't mean he should do it. Yes, he can play high. Yes, he can play in the slot. Yes, he can play outside corner. He plays box safety, but I felt like Gift did exactly what we've been talking about, which is tired of seeing Derwin 30 yards off the line of scrimmage. That is not where he excels. I know they primarily listed him as a slot defender, which he was, but I just felt like it was more a line of scrimmage defender. It was a box safety. He was playing around the ball, almost got to Josh Allen on that one blitz. He forced the incompletion because he got the pressure there. But, man, he was just maybe half a hand away from swatting that ball away. And that's what I want to see more of. That's why I said, a couple weeks ago, like I know they're labels that you don't like necessarily attaching because the linebacker position has been so devalued. But to me, like that's where I want him. He's got the strength. He's got the pop to play linebacker. He's got the speed where he makes the middle of the field. And it continued to be an issue in that game against the Bills where, our current pair of linebackers struggle in coverage, and I'd love to see Derwin get some snaps there. So maybe that's where they're going. So what I'm getting at, Chris, is I don't see that as a negative. I see that as, hey, let's get 74% of snaps at 100% of Derwin. Let's not get 100% of snaps at 75% of Derwin, because when you're lining him up as the nickel opposite Trey Tucker and he burns you for a 60-yard touchdown, that just sucks. It sucks for Derwin. He's got no business being in that position in the first place. So I thought they deployed him in a much more efficient and effective way.
Agreed. It's been a difficult season for Derwin, even dating back to last year. I go back to that really a year ago, that Indianapolis game, that 15-yard penalty that he got. He's playing football, and it's got to be very frustrating for him because some of those 15-yard penalties carried over into this year. And I think I've never played safety in the NFL, right? But naturally you have to feel like, man, I have to be kind of aware of where I'm going to hit somebody. And maybe you're thinking a little bit too much. And then you throw in the fact that he's playing a million different positions on defense. Right. I think that this was the perfect opportunity for Gift to just say, hey, man, you're going to do one thing. You're going to settle down, you get to take a breath. And, I don't really view it as a negative either, because they are also in evaluation mode with some of these other younger safeties on the field. So I think in December, it's you don't want to read too much into it. But I know that Derwin's going to want to be out there during the money downs. And, I could tell maybe he was a little bit frustrated by it, but it is what it is at this point. And I think it's been a difficult year for Derwin, but he's still an all-pro player. And wherever or whoever the defense coordinator is next year is going to have a really nice chip. And it's just a matter of trying to find the perfect place for Derwin, as you said.
I don't think Derwin would push back on any of that. I think he'd be it has been a really rough year for him. There have been some busted coverages. There have been some bad angles. There have been some missed tackles, been some bad penalties. It's just been a rough go. It's been a rough season, but we certainly know the talent because you see it. You see it in bursts. And so, and look, he was tasked with so much. I think Brandon Staley had this vision for him that he could essentially be this sort of omnipresent force, out on the field,
And he bought into that money.
He did.
He bought into that to his credit.
Yeah, 100%. He never pushed back, but I think it goes to some of the things that we saw, under Coach Staley, where Joey Bosa is trying to cover a tight end leaking out of the backfield and just getting burned on the sideline and saying, what are we doing? And Khalil Mack, 5 yards too wide, chipping a slot receiver before he tries to pass rush, knowing he's never going to get home. Like just some of those things were eliminated, and these guys were able to just get after it last week. And if there's one thing I think I'd like to see different is it goes, it's what we keep saying. I just like to see some different names out there, and we did, and we saw it in the defensive line, and we saw Scott Matlock out there for snaps. We saw Nick Johnson, and we saw Tito Abonia, and I thought the rotation on the front was really good, and they stayed fresh, and they kept putting pressure on Josh. He's a tough guy to bring down, so you're not going to get the sacks, but you're going to force the incompletions. You're going to force the short runs, the check downs, and they did a lot of that. So I would just like to see it at some other positions, and particularly it goes back to I can't quite figure out why Dan Henley's not getting snaps. I don't think it doesn't make sense to me unless, again, it's something in practice. It's something that we're not privy to, which very well could be the case. That Kenneth Murray and Eric Kendricks just bust their tail in practice. They're really good leaders, and you want to reward them with playing time. But for me, I'd be a little bit selfish and say, I need to do this for the organization. Moving forward, we've got to evaluate, this young talent to see if he can be our linebacker, moving forward and save us a heck of a lot of money because he's a third-round pick.
It'll be interesting to see what happens these next 2 weeks because I believe everything Gift said in the organization said they're trying to go out and win these games. Like they wanted to beat Buffalo, and I don't think they're going to pull some of these. I was interested, Buddy, to see what the running back share was going to look like. Is Spiller going to just take the lion's share? And they said, what, we're going to win the game. We're going to try to win the game, and we're going to put the ball in Austin's hands, and enough with just the three different running backs carrying the football.
Though, Chris? You know what I think that is too? That's a veteran coach respecting a veteran player. We talked about it. So now all Austin needs is 80 yards in each of the next two games to get his $1 million. And I think that's a gift. That's how you win a locker room. That's how you get players to respect you, to say, look, you're 28 going on 29 years old. $1 million is a lot of money, for you moving forward, kind of knowing what the landscape is for running back contracts. Let's put that $1 million in your pocket. You're probably not going to get, he could get 4 touchdowns in the next 2 games. I think it'd be pretty tough to get the extra $600,000, but I think they feel like we can get you that $1 million. We can get you to 11.25 and get you, an extra bit of cash in your pocket. And so I think that played a big role in why Austin got all those touches. And I love it. And I think he deserves it. And I think it's great for the locker room, and it's great for camaraderie for guys who want to fight to get him those yards. I think players respect that, and are going to get behind GIF and get out there and try to help Austin get to that number.
No doubt. We'll put a pin in Buffalo, quick break, and then we'll talk Denver and then everything else going on in the NFL that may relate to the Chargers in this coaching search.
All right, guys, a big thank you to our partner, Microsoft Surface, the official sideline technology provider and laptop of the NFL and the Los Angeles Chargers, that provides players and coaches with the tools to succeed both on and off the field. Check out the powerful Surface Pro 9, combining the power of a laptop with the flexibility of a tablet at surface.com. VIP ticket packages for the first ever Super Bowl in Las Vegas are now on sale, and only On Location offers all-inclusive experiences worthy of the entertainment capital of the world. Ticket packages boast an array of offerings, such as premium seating to the game, epic pregame parties with headline talent, NFL legend appearances, premium drinks and fare, and much more. Visit NFLOnLocation.com or search NFL On Location today. Your football experience of a lifetime awaits, only with On Location.
So, Money, big news out of Denver yesterday, taping this on a Thursday. Sean Payton putting Russell Wilson on the bench for the last 2 games of the season. Broncos are 7-8 after losing to the Patriots, pretty much put their playoff hopes on life support. And it feels like Russell's the scapegoat, quite frankly. I know that this is a financial decision, but based on some of Sean Payton's comments, it was kind of funny to me that they're putting all this on Russ when they're 7-8, and I could go back through the season and see 35 points the Commanders scored on them, 31 points that the Jets scored on them, 70 points that the Dolphins scored on them, 42 points that the Lions scored on them. And Russell, if you put Russell's numbers up next to Justin's, they're about the same. Yeah. Actually, Russell has 6 more touchdowns, and I know they're different players and everything, but I just think that it's a little bit of a scapegoat situation, and I don't think Sean Payton wanted to coach Russell Wilson to begin with.
No, to me, it's identical to what happened with Derek Carr last year. I think it's exactly, we're going to try to make it work. He's not my guy. If it were up to me, he would not be here, but he is, and he's making a lot of money. So let's see if we can, and he's got a pretty good resume. Let's see if we can make it work. And ultimately, when you get to the point when you're eliminated from the playoffs and you can't take the risk of that player getting hurt because then their contract's going to vest the following season, you just move on. And so, I would love to really put my foot on the pedal and say, yes, this is Sean Payton trying to absolve himself of any responsibility from the mess that this year happened to be. And there is part of that. I think we've seen enough from Payton to recognize that. And then that's sort of his MO a little bit. But to me, it was okay, we'll try to make it work. I'm not crazy about it. That's why I want you to sign this guy for $6 million as a backup to a quarterback that's making $37 million. So we saw this writing on the wall that Payton was not sold on him. It'll be interesting. Jarrett had a couple good starts last year for the Raiders. When he did. It's funny, right? So it's like the same thing for Stidham. Like you did this with Carr last year, and now you're going to do it to Wilson this year. And the guy threw for over 300 yards per game. He can sling it around. But I'll tell you, as far as what I'd like to see, I'm fine for the Chargers seeing Stidham instead of Russ. Russ extends plays, very similar to what, the headaches that those mobile quarterbacks give you. I thought they played pretty well against him. They had that great pick. Mikey had that great pick in the first, on the first attempt of the game that they weren't able to cash in for any points. But it's still a very good defense. They've moved on from Kareem Jackson, obviously. But you still got Justin Simmons out there. You still have Zach Allen, who's a nightmare. And this will be interesting because when we talked about what a mess it was after that game, the Chargers' offensive line just couldn't pick up a blitz. Like they had no idea, and they were standard blitzes. We were talking to Tony Baselli about it because he came for the next game. He's like, it's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. It's just a standard slot corner blitz, nickel blitz, safety blitz, delayed blitz. Like there was nothing exotic about what they were doing. And this front had no idea where to go, where to shift protections. And I think you saw a little bit of it last week. And so going back 2 weeks, right, against the Raiders, what do we talk about with Easton? Great second half, some great things in there, but you can't have a pick six and cough the ball up twice. And he eliminated all the turnovers, but he still took the sacks. So you want to see him now eliminate the sacks. You've cleaned up the turnovers. Now let's clean up the sacks. And I think on top of that, Easton will go back and watch that film against Buffalo and realize all those RPOs that Kellen was giving him, man, he needed to keep 2 or 3 of them, and those things were going for big gains if he doesn't hand that ball off and he keeps it and takes it instead. So I to me, that's the next step for Easton in this game. Now in his third start, okay, I've cleaned that up. I know I have to take care of the ball. Step 2, let's eliminate the sacks and let's use my legs a little bit more. Let's get out there because it's going to work. And Kellen's dialing up some really good calls on these RPOs, and he's just got to make better decisions on a handful of those. So I know we started that by talking about Russell Wilson and Jarrett Stidham, but whatever, just kind of came back
what
to
it is, and it's been it hasn't been a kind place for the Chargers, Denver, in terms of going in there and trying to get wins. Real quick on Russ before we move on, do you think that had they beaten the Patriots and gone 8-7, that Russ would be the starter today? Right,
I do, because they're still very realistically alive for the playoffs. You've got a Chargers team down half their roster, and now you're 9-7, and 10-7 very well could get you in. So to me, yes, I think he's still the starter. It's a season's lost. He's not going to be back here next year. We cannot afford to get him injured and give him that extra money.
Buddy, the only reason I keep bringing this up is I find this just very interesting as far as it relates to the Chargers moving forward and whoever the head coach is going to be, because the Broncos have said that Russell Wilson isn't going to be under center next year for us. He's not going to play quarterback for us, right? That's pretty much what we got from that. Yeah. So
I feel like it was he's not a Sean Payton type of quarterback. Sean Payton is Drew Brees, Joe Lombardi. We know it. I think Joe, to some degree, wrecked Justin Herbert those couple years and tried to make him into Drew Brees. He's not. It's not what we got here. We've got the most physically talented quarterback in the league. Use it, and that's what those guys believe in. Snap the ball, take the ball, get rid of the ball, and let everybody else do the work. And that's what they want to do, and that's just not Russell Wilson's forte. That's not what he's best at.
So this is what the division is now, right? It's Andy Reid and Sean Payton, right? So we know like Hall of Fame head coaches, or Andy Reid, surefire Hall of Fame head coach. Patrick Mahomes without receivers, it looked a little bit different this year. The Raiders, Aiden O'Connell, not sure he's the answer. Didn't even attempt a pass after the first quarter of the game against the Chiefs. And then now at Denver, is it Stidham? Is it a rookie? Is it somebody you bring in via free agency? All I know is that Herbert and Mahomes still, as far as the quarterback position is concerned, the class of the division. And when you bring in let's say you bring in an established head coach to coach this Chargers team, I feel like that there's more questions about the Broncos when we thought that they were kind of turning the corner with Russ and they were going to go on a little run, maybe make the playoffs. It looks a little bit different now, especially with the cap implications that Russ has moving forward.
Well, the one thing that the Broncos have that perhaps the Chargers don't is they've got pretty good depth, right? So they've, specifically on defense, they've got a really good secondary. Love their linebackers, Browning, Singleton. Like, they've got good. They their offensive line is kind of finally sort of figured it out, which was a big struggle for a while. They've managed to put that together a little bit now. So I feel like just with the coaching, look, Sean Payton, as much as maybe people don't like him, he's a good coach. He's a really good coach. And I figure they just need to find their guy. Like, as crazy as it sounds, we've seen a bit of a decline from Russell. He doesn't quite have the explosiveness, doesn't have the quicks that he used to. So those runs, those extending the plays, they're not quite what they used to be. So I think what direction do they go? I don't know. I'm not quite sure. Thing. It doesn't seem like a rookie, is going to be in range from where they're picking, but tough to say. Maybe they sign Easton Stick. Who knows? It's, you know what I mean? Like, I don't quite know, but clearly it's not Russ. And they think enough of Jarrett Stidham to give him that amount of money. I think it was $6 million, if I remember right. That's a lot of money.
I think he got like $10 million for 2 years.
Yeah, so
something like that.
That's a lot to back up a guy that's making $40 million. So maybe it is going to be Stidham, and they're just doing this 2-game audition. Now, look, the Raiders tried to do that and ultimately decided, no, we're gonna move on to Garoppolo. I don't know what their cap situation is, but there are going to be some interesting quarterbacks out there this upcoming season. Kirk Cousins is going to be a free agent. Great decision maker. Very good at getting the ball out. That's a real possibility. But again, when you're going to be carrying $38 million, I think it's $38 million next year of a cap number for Russ, it's probably more likely than not Jarrett Stidham and a rookie is what I would guess. Yeah, you're not going to trade. You're not trading that contract.
No, there's no chance. Kirk Cousins would be perfect in Denver, but I don't think they can afford it. And I don't know. I'm just looking at the rookies. Like Bo Nix is the only like experienced like rookie I think that Sean
Michael
Payton
Penix
would want to work with. Penix too, yeah. Penix a little injury prone, but he's been awesome this year. Yeah, I don't know. I just find the division fascinating now with all the decisions that Denver has to make. And what are the Raiders going to do? Like they crushed the Chargers. They went into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs, and their defense was just balling out. Like you have to make Pierce the head coach now. No,
please, please. It's my answer to that. Please do it.
Yeah.
Please. That's 100%. Look, they're playing great. They're playing inspired football. Clearly, they like playing for him. I don't think there's I'm not taking anything away from him. But he put 63 up on the Chargers, their rival, on national TV, knocks off the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Those are impressive. That is impressive to put on your resume. I'm not taking anything away from that. So I wouldn't. And look, if you're Mark Davis, you gave John Gruden $100 million. Ultimately, I don't know what they had to give him to get it right so he didn't sue him after being fired the way he was. But I'm sure it was a pretty big number to settle. They got $30 million going to Josh McDaniels because they signed him to a 5-year. I think it was 5 years, 50, if I remember right. Maybe it was 4 years, 40. Whatever it was a lot of money.
A lot of money.
So maybe you give Antonio 3 years, at 4 per, something like that. And that way you're saving a little bit of money. You're only paying $14 million for your head coach instead of 25 because you're chasing, Jim Harbaugh at 15 mil or, Bill Belichick at 20 mil. Like I don't know what their financial situation is, but I would assume sooner or later, that's a pretty big tab. I mean, heck, you got the rumor out there that Ben Johnson wants $15 million to be a first-time head coach. There's no way. I mean, I appreciate the agent trying to plant that seed, but come on, man. Let's be real here. So I wouldn't be surprised.
I think it would be a calculated risk by the Raiders to just, like you said, like 4 years per. If the wheels come off next year, you could part ways pretty easily and then go after another big fish, right?
I'm all for it.
As far as this head coaching position is concerned, I think our buddy Joe Reedy tried to ask Jim Harbaugh about the Chargers opening.
Oh, did he? I didn't see it.
He was at Disney World or Disneyland, and they asked. I think Joe just went in there and shouted out the fact that the Chargers are looking for a coach and his reaction. And Jim hit him with the one-track mind. One day at a time. Attack today. Today. Somebody asked him about another head coach. We're going to one-track mind. Attack today. So we got to give Joe Reedy a shout-out for at least swinging the bat,
Yep. Love you, Joe, and your cats. Way to go. Love it. Yeah. Look, we've said it now ever since Brandon was let go. To me, I feel like that's what the people want. And I'm with them. There are plenty of good coaches. We've talked about all the names that I think make sense. Dan Quinn has been a head coach before, is a great guy, has worked with Kellen, and I think it's an opportunity for Kellen to show off a little bit here these next couple weeks with Easton and these no Keenan, no Mike Williams, no Justin Herbert. Can you put up some points and get a couple wins? And then you can kind of keep that synergy going moving forward. So I think there's some great positives there. I just keep going back to the idea that the moment Jim Harbaugh walks in that door, he walks in with an offensive background I was a quarterback in the league, won playoff games. I'm in the Ring of Honor in Indianapolis, and I'm a winner. I'm not just a winner at Stanford. I'm not just a winner at San Diego. I'm not just a winner at Michigan. I was a winner with the 49ers. We were 2 minutes away from winning a Super Bowl. Turned around a team that was it was the dregs. I mean, it was a disaster of a team when he took it over. And 44-14 or something like that was his record. Like, it's ridiculous.
He was incredible.
So I just feel like there's something to that presence. We're going to change things. You guys lost more one-score games than any team over the last 5 years. Y'all lost more games by 3 or fewer points. They got a shot at doing that the most in history It's the 93 Oilers that were 0-7 in games they lost by 3 points or less. Right now, the Chargers got 6 of them. So we're changing. I'm a winner. You guys may not be winners, but I am. And you're going to join me in being winners moving forward. So I just think there's something to that. If it's anybody else, if it's Ben Johnson or Mike McDonald, great. I'm sure they come in with great. That's the thing. It's like people, we don't know. We don't know what these meetings are like or how they go or what the presentation is, what the vision is. But for me, I feel like I know what Jim Harbaugh is. Freaking guy's a psycho. He is a psycho who's super competitive, and all he wants to do is win football games. That is why he believes he was put on earth, to go win football games. And there's something about guys like that I just appreciate.
And you get to interview him every week. I mean,
I don't know if he'd be okay with that.
Maybe that'll change.
I mean, the funny thing is, like, when he first got the job at San Diego, we used to put him on. We would put him on the Petros Money Show. And then that carried over when he got the Stanford job. He came on all the time because he would use us to recruit Southern California. I would assume that was his idea. Like, well, hey, here's the number one show in Southern California.
He's gonna talk to you every week.
Sometimes he'd be great. Other times he'd be like, not enjoying this. I don't like you guys very much. But, and also I got to call a ton of Stanford games with Curtis Conway, who was his teammate, and we would go down on the field, and some games he'd be in a great mood and other games he wouldn't be. And it just kind of depended on what Jim Harbaugh you got. But there's no denying it's not about how comfortable we're going to be. It's about winning games and giving Justin Herbert and this team the best voice moving forward. And I think anybody you talk to that's in his inner circle, they all say the same thing, that not winning that Super Bowl tore him apart. And he is fueled. He is determined to get back to the NFL at some point, get back to the Super Bowl and win it. So let's have it be with the Powder Blues.
I think the best case scenario for those who want Jim Harbaugh in the NFL, specifically in Los Angeles, is they go out and they beat Alabama in the Rose Bowl and they win a national championship. And he can leave Michigan knowing that he accomplished the mission. And really, he kind of has already, right? Going to back-to-back CFPs. He totally has. But just to have the complete icing on the cake and cherry on top, winning a national championship, then I feel like he would be like, you know what? I did what I said I was going to do. Now I got to go back to the NFL and win a Super Bowl. And who knows, it could be with the Chargers. We talked about all the big fish money, Belichick, Harbaugh, Tomlin, who I think it'd be ridiculous if he went anywhere. I think he's going to stay in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
The first-time coordinators or the coordinators who used to be head coaches, that list I think is rather short. You mentioned Dan Quinn, a guy who has been to a Super Bowl and has done a heck of a job in Dallas. Ben Johnson, who, I mean, he lights up the scoreboard every week, but I think I even said it last week, we're not in the interview. I don't know. I mean, I know he's learned from Dan Campbell, and Dan Campbell's learned from Sean Payton, and I'm sure that he has a CEO-type mentality in there somewhere, but I don't know. Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator, would you bring in another defensive mind?
I think that's very Brandon Staley-esque, right? Guy that coordinates the number one defense, first year doing it. What do we make of that? What's the takeaway? That, you know what I mean? I think that to me is a lot of times the pendulum's got to swing, and that's too similar. When you go through it, you've got Frank Reich, who was let go by the Panthers, and reportedly they were interested in bringing him in as the OC. No one in Arizona. Washington, Eric Bieniemy. But there's a reason why he's interviewed for seemingly every head coaching job and keeps, not getting them.
What do you think about Bieniemy? It's, Howell was playing really good ball, then he just hit a complete wall. Yeah. The team's a mess. But Kansas City is also a mess offensively.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. You mentioned it. He's interviewed a ton of times. I guess it hasn't gone well.
No. And I'm going Bears. They may get rid of Eberflus. I don't know if you can bring him in considering his record. Saints, no. Packers, no. Falcons, if they let go of Arthur Smith, you'd probably bring him in for an interview. I know they were interested in him when they hired Brandon Staley. No. Vikings, Seahawks, Rams. Raheem Morris, be interesting. Was so young when he got that opportunity.
He was.
Those players, my gosh, you look at the defensive talent on that team, it is all kids. It's all
rookies and second-year guys.
And they're playing their tail off, so that's interesting. You mentioned Dan Quinn. Tampa, no. Ben Johnson's the hot name out of Detroit. Philly, nobody. San Francisco, they've been kind of just picked clean. Patriots, we already talked about. Belichick. Tennessee, you've talked about if they move on from Vrabel, but I just don't quite see that happening. Bengals, Steelers, Tomlin, we talked about. Colts, Bills, Browns, Jim Schwartz. That's an interesting one. You think about, you've got no quarterback on that team. The quarterback position's been an absolute disaster, and you got 10 wins, and you're kicking ass on defense. So that's an interesting one.
Interesting you mentioned that name, because all I can think about is the Jim Harbaugh, Jim Schwartz handshake.
Oh, yeah,
after one of the games. Yeah.
Exactly.
Schwartz got a little fired to him, too, when he took the Lions to the playoffs.
Yeah, the year after they were 0-for.
That dude's like a genius, too. I think he went to Georgetown, and he's a
very bright guy.
Yeah.
Very bright.
Georgetown he would be an interesting name. He's had success as a coordinator everywhere he's gone.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Chiefs, nobody. Dolphins. I mean, there's that Frank Smith thing, but I can't see that. Not somebody that was on Brandon's staff there, so that would be weird. So yeah, I think that's, there's a lot. There's I'm sure some names that we're not thinking of. Some
Are there college names besides Harbaugh?
I mean, selfishly, the only one that everybody talks about Ryan Day, that he definitely has an NFL presence to him, more of a CEO, stickler to details kind of guy. So that would be one. And rumor is he's interested in making the jump. I think that's more important than just like one of the scheme guys. Selfishly, for me, one of my absolute favorite people in the profession is Chris Peterson. I think that guy would be successful anywhere he goes. He is such an inspiring figure, the way he speaks to people, the motivational, just there's something about him. He just, anytime you're in his presence, you just feel there's like a lift. He just won't do it. I think he's so content in his post-coaching life. But you're talking about a guy that won at Davis, that made Boise State a national power and knocked off Oklahoma in a BCS game, took Washington to the playoff. Like that guy's a coach. He can freaking coach. So, and there's the connection with Kellen, obviously. The two made incredible magic at Boise together. So that would be it. I don't think there's anyone else from the coaching ranks. There's the Brian Kelly, but no thank you. I'll take a pass on that.
All I can think about Brian Kelly is my family.
Oh, here we go now. He'll show up here at our press conference and be like, "What's up? Super stoked.
What's up, bros?
To be here, guys." Yeah, no, thank you. I'll take a pass on Brian Kelly. I mean, look what you've already got it out there. The guy's just never, I don't know. It's like, I don't remember who put it out there. If it was Felt, I think it might have been Bruce that put it out there, that if Jim were to leave Michigan, that Brian Kelly be interested. It's like, dude, relax.
Already.
Just
jumping jobs.
So I think that I wish I could think of, I guess if I go to NCAA and go to rankings, let's see if there's anybody that we're forgetting. Michigan, look,
there's
Kalen DeBoer's
old Dabo rumors. I don't think he's an NFL guy.
No, Sark, no, Saban, not going to do it. Norvell is, Kirby. I think those guys are, they're great coaches, but I think recruiting is such a big part of their success. Dan Lanning's interesting. He's certainly got those guys fired up, and is pretty incredible what he's been able to do at Oregon. But those are all just such big risks, that's. And then, like, when you talk about the Lincoln Rileys, sort of thing, those are just sort of scheme guys. And I think you fall into a little bit of a danger zone with guys like that, as opposed to leaders, more of the, oh, yeah, that guy's a head coach. And that's sort of the sense you get with Jim Harbaugh, with Kalen DeBoer, with Nick Saban, with Mike Norvell. Like, these guys are head coaches. They're Ryan Day, they're not play card, what's the next great play I can call. They're leaders. So there's a lot of interesting names.
Midway through the USC year, I think Lincoln, who there, you thought there were some rumors about him wanting to go to the NFL, those quickly went away. Yeah. So I think he'll be a Trojan.
Yeah, no doubt. And he's making a ton of cash, and he's making a ridiculous amount of money. Now, look, he's losing Caleb Williams. It was fun to watch Miller Moss last night, put together a heck of a game and set a USC record. I love seeing those stories. It's wonderful, even if he never plays, another game for SC, because they bring someone in through the transfer portal. But, it goes to show you Lincoln can coach offense, man. He can freaking coach offense. So I get it. I totally get it. But, to me, I think for the Chargers, I do think there's something to having that winning mentality, walk through the door, set a tone, change. I'm not necessarily saying change a culture, but just I think set a tone is the best way to put it.
I think establish a culture of winning, with somebody who's done it before. And Money, last thing, because I think that there's been some chatter among fans too, like, well, shoot, next year, look at the cap. It's for $40 million over.
Yeah.
We're going to take a step back anyway. What could next year look like? I think with A+ coaching, they're gonna be all right. And B, what do you think they need to do to make sure that they can make the playoffs next year? Like you mentioned, the top 10 draft pick, that's a chip that can be turned into a lot of different positions, and they need some positions. Do you bring back Mike or Keenan, Joey or Khalil? Like, there's a lot of big decisions that need to be made. And again, these last 2 weeks, we talked about the development of some of these guys. We haven't seen Henley out there. There's some other guys that we need to see across the defensive line, especially.
Sure.
But I don't think that they're too far away. I think that the cap. Some people say the cap is a myth, and you can get around it, and you can manipulate it, and to some degree you can. I know Justin Herbert is going to make a ton of money here over the next several years, but you can still field, I think, a contending team.
They have one of two paths they can take, and the one path is the Saints, and you kick the can down the road another year, and you move some money around, and you keep all the old guys, and you're like, well, because you're going to have to take your medicine. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. You can't, yes, the cap keeps going up, but it's just eventually you're going to have to reset, and you're going to have to move or cut and take your poison pills, in terms of cap hits with dead cap money. The Rams had to do it, and they were able to compete. The Rams did it this year, and they 2 years ago, and they had to restock their roster with all that young talent. And last year they played like crap, and this year they're back, and next year they're going to be even better. And so I think Justin's 25. Like, to me, it almost makes a little bit more sense just to take your medicine now, take it right away, rip the Band-Aid off. And by that, what I mean is, I think you shop. You figure out which of these big numbers can get a trade. Can I get a mid-round pick? Can I get a 3 for one of these blue chips? Because that then lessens your financial impact, right? It takes it down a little bit, so you don't have as big of a hit against the cap as just letting the guy go and eating all the dead money. If you can make a trade, get some of that money back. They're already doing it with J.C. Jackson. They took a huge hit on that because they had to pay the majority of the salary just to get him off the roster. But if you can find some teams that are willing to trade for and restructure because they feel like they're really close and maybe they're one wide receiver away or one defensive lineman away, then to me, that would be a yes. I think they say yes in those situations. Can we get an asset? Can we get a mid-round pick? Can we get a day 2 pick? A 2, 3, or a 4 for one of these guys and just restock the roster and get young and kind of reset our financial situation moving forward, because it's clear they have to. I mean, that's just, it's either that or, all right, we're $40 million over. Let's restructure, convert this to signing bonus, add some voidable years, and we're coming back with the same guys.
A+ coaching will mask that too. If you rip the Band-Aid off,
yes.
If you have, Sean McVay's the perfect example of that. Like what they're doing, Money is remarkable with all these young guys, and an elite quarterback also masks that. Like, Stafford was hurt during that 5-12 year, and the wheels came off a little bit. But had Stafford stayed healthy, they probably would have won 8 or 9 games last year.
Yeah, they had to reset their O-line, and I think, but they did, and I think it's kind of what we're getting at, right? You just got to reset. You're going to have to reset some position groups that either got old or underperformed with some young talent, and hope you can coach them up and develop them. And that's what the Rams did.
No doubt. Denver on Sunday. Anything else about that matchup that you want to dive into, or we're good?
Let's get Ekeler his 80 yards. Maybe try to get him 100. So all he needs is 60 against the Chiefs. Get him his money. Let's get Easton a win. Let's continue to
Giff a win. Let's get Giff a win. I want to hear Giff mic'd up in the locker room post game.
100%. I'm with you. I would love to see him get this win. I think it's attainable. They split with the Broncos every year. So they beat them. The Broncos beat the Chargers here. Let's get the split by knocking them off there. Get your 6th win and see if you can close it out by ruining the Chiefs and pushing them down to the 4th seed. That's what I'd love to see.
Could you imagine if the Raiders win next week and the Chiefs lose to the Bengals and the Chargers have the ability to keep the Chiefs out of the playoffs? That would be
great.
Amazing. Yeah,
it would be great.
You're putting the Raiders in, but the fact that you can knock the Chiefs out makes it sweeter.
Maybe get Antonio Pierce a 10-year contract.
A lifetime contract. Exactly. All right, guys. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, buddy. Safe travels to Denver.
Appreciate it.
This has been Chargers Weekly, presented by Microsoft Surface.